The uncomfortable truth about honesty. In the grand tapestry of human interaction, honesty is the thread that binds relationships, trust, and even societies together. Yet, we often find ourselves entangled in a web of deceit. Not necessarily because we are inherently dishonest, but because the truth is often inconvenient, uncomfortable, or even painful. The ancient Stoic philosophers, known for their rigorous discipline and pursuit of virtue, understood this well. They taught that to live a fulfilled life, one must face reality with clear eyes, stripping away illusions and embracing the truth, no matter how unsettling it may be. But in our modern world, where appearances often take precedence over reality, identifying the truth can be challenging. Lies aren't always grand deceptions, they are often subtle, hidden in the nuances of everyday conversation. In this video, we will explore 7 signs that someone is lying to you, weaving together the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy with practical examples and personal stories. By the end, you will not only be better equipped to spot dishonesty but also more aligned with the principles of living an authentic, truth-driven life. Chapter 1: The Subtle Art of Deception. People lie more than you think. Let's start with a simple yet profound truth: people lie more often than we think. It's not just the strangers on the street or the fleeting acquaintances in your life, it's the people closest to you, your friends, your family, your partner. We like to believe that we are good at spotting lies, that our instincts will protect us from deception. However, the truth is that our desire to trust the people we care about often blinds us to the signs that something is amiss. Imagine you have a friend who has always been there for you, someone you've known for years. You trust this person implicitly. But over time, you start noticing small inconsistencies in their stories. Perhaps they say they were at work, but later you find out they were elsewhere. These discrepancies are minor, so you brush them off, thinking it's just a mistake or a slip of memory. However, as these instances accumulate, you begin to see a pattern. The truth, as it turns out, is that your friend has been lying to you about significant aspects of their life. This realization hits hard because it forces you to question the foundation of your relationship. The Stoics believed in the importance of living in harmony with nature, which they interpreted as living in accordance with the truth. To the Stoics, there was no greater virtue than honesty. They would argue that when someone lies, they are acting against the natural order, creating a dissonance that inevitably leads to suffering. In our modern context, this means that when someone close to us lies, it disrupts the natural flow of trust and connection, leading to a breakdown in the relationship. This breakdown is not just an external one, it impacts us internally as well. When we discover that someone has lied to us, we experience a deep sense of betrayal. This feeling is not merely an emotional response, it is a reflection of our innate need for truth and integrity in our lives. The Stoics taught that we must learn to accept the reality of human nature, that people lie, but that we should strive to rise above it by seeking truth in all our dealings. This doesn't mean becoming cynical or distrusting, but rather being mindful and discerning. The illusion of trust. Trust is often considered the bedrock of any relationship, but it's an illusion that can be easily shattered. The Stoics believed in the concept of apatheia or emotional tranquility, which comes from detaching oneself from external events and focusing on what can be controlled. In relationships, we often invest our emotions heavily, placing our trust in others without realizing that trust is not a static state but a dynamic process. When someone lies to us, it's not just the lie that hurts, it's the shattering of this illusion of trust. Let's take a deeper dive into the earlier story. You begin to see the pattern of lies. But you choose to ignore it because you don't want to confront the uncomfortable truth. You rationalize the behavior, telling yourself that maybe your friend had a good reason for lying or that it's not as bad as it seems. This is where the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum comes in, a mental exercise where one imagines the worst possible scenarios to prepare oneself emotionally. Had you practiced this, you might have been better prepared to deal with the eventual truth. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This applies to lies as well. When someone lies to us, it's our reaction, whether we choose to confront it, ignore it, or internalize it, that determines the impact on our lives. The Stoic approach would be to acknowledge the lie, confront it calmly, and then decide whether the relationship is worth continuing. Chapter 2, Recognizing the Signs. Changing the subject. One of the most subtle yet revealing signs of dishonesty is when someone changes the subject abruptly during a conversation. This is often a tactic used to avoid uncomfortable topics or to steer the conversation away from areas where they might be exposed. Consider a relationship where every time you bring up future plans, something as simple as discussing where you both want to be in a year, the other person quickly changes the subject. At first, you might think they're just not ready to talk about it or that they're distracted. But as this behavior continues, you begin to realize that they're avoiding the topic because it forces them to confront the reality of the relationship. This avoidance is not just about the topic at hand, it's a sign of a deeper issue, perhaps a fear of commitment, a reluctance to face reality, or even a lack of genuine interest in the relationship. The Stoics believed in the importance of facing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. They taught that by confronting reality head-on, we free ourselves from the chains of illusion and live a more authentic life. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often wrote about the importance of living in accordance with nature. He believed that avoiding the truth was akin to going against the natural order, which would inevitably lead to suffering. In this context, changing the subject during a conversation is a form of avoidance, a refusal to engage with the truth. The Stoic response would be to gently but firmly bring the conversation back to the topic at hand, refusing to allow the other person to escape into distraction. In your own life, when you notice someone changing the subject abruptly, take it as a cue to dig deeper. Don't let them off the hook. Ask direct questions. And don't be afraid to confront the issue head-on. This doesn't mean being confrontational for the sake of it, but rather, it's about setting a standard for honesty and integrity in your interactions. Listening to understand, not to respond. Another sign of dishonesty or at least insincerity is when someone listens to respond rather than to understand. In our fast-paced world, many of us fall into the trap of listening just long enough to craft our response, missing the true essence of what the other person is saying. Let's consider a time when you were in a conversation, nodding along, pretending to be engaged, but internally you were preparing your next point. This is a common scenario, especially in heated discussions or debates. However, there was a time when you decided to change this approach. You had a conversation with a colleague who was going through a tough time. Instead of jumping in with advice, you simply listened, no interjection, no advice, just pure attention. By the end of the conversation, your colleague told you they had never felt so heard. This experience was transformative, teaching you the power of genuine listening. Listening to understand, rather than to respond, is a rare skill but one that is incredibly powerful. It allows for deeper connections and a more honest exchange of ideas. The Stoics valued wisdom, and part of wisdom is understanding others, not just their words, but their intentions and emotions. By truly listening, we can gain insight into the unspoken truths that often lie beneath the surface. Seneca, another prominent Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about the importance of understanding human nature. He believed that to live a virtuous life, one must strive to understand others deeply. This involves not just hearing their words but also understanding the motivations and emotions behind those words. When someone listens only to respond, they miss this deeper understanding, and the conversation remains superficial. In your interactions, make a conscious effort to listen with the intention of understanding. This means putting aside your own thoughts and focusing entirely on the other person. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the one who always has something to say. But the rewards are immense. Not only will you build stronger connections, but you'll also be better equipped to discern truth from lies. Chapter 3: The Red Flags of Deception. The red flag of defensiveness. Defensiveness is another major red flag that someone may not be telling the truth. When someone reacts defensively to a simple, harmless question, it often indicates that they have something to hide. Imagine working on a group project where one of your teammates consistently becomes defensive when asked about their progress. A simple question like, "How's the report coming along?" is met with a barrage of defensive comments, accusing you of micromanaging or not trusting them. Over time, you start to notice that this person spends most of their time on their phone during meetings and rarely contributes anything substantial. Eventually, it's revealed that they haven't done their share of the work and were trying to cover it up with defensiveness. Defensiveness, in this context, is a protective mechanism, an attempt to deflect attention away from the truth. The Stoics would view this behavior as a sign of weakness, a failure to live in accordance with the virtue of honesty. They believe that a person who is secure in their integrity has no need to be defensive. Instead, they can respond calmly and openly to any question, knowing that they have nothing to hide. The Stoics taught that true strength lies in being unshaken by external events or accusations. Epictetus, for example, emphasized the importance of maintaining one's composure in the face of adversity. When someone becomes defensive, they are revealing their inner turmoil, their fear of being exposed. The Stoic approach would be to recognize this defensiveness as a sign that something is amiss and to remain calm, asking probing questions to uncover the truth. The next time you encounter defensiveness, resist the urge to back down. Instead, calmly continue to ask questions, allowing the other person to reveal their true intentions. By maintaining your composure, you can navigate through the smoke screen of defensiveness and arrive at the truth. The danger of over-polished stories. Stories that are too polished, too perfect, are often a sign of dishonesty. Life is messy, full of unexpected twists and turns. When someone's story sounds rehearsed or too good to be true, it's often because it is. Let's delve into a time when you met someone who was an exceptional storyteller. Their tales were filled with cinematic flair, perfectly timed, and flowed seamlessly. One such story involved a business deal they supposedly closed, complete with dramatic moments and a triumphant conclusion. However, as you got to know this person better, you started to notice inconsistencies in their stories. Eventually, it became clear that they had exaggerated or even fabricated large parts of their tales. Over-polished stories are a form of manipulation. They are crafted to control the narrative, to make the storyteller appear more successful, more capable, or more interesting than they really are. The Stoics would see this as a form of deception, not just of others, but of oneself. By creating these elaborate fictions, the storyteller is avoiding the reality of their own life, choosing instead to live in a fantasy world. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the importance of living in accordance with nature, of accepting life as it is, rather than trying to mold it into something it's not. Over-polished stories are the antithesis of this philosophy. They represent a refusal to accept the messiness of life, a desire to impose order and perfection where none exists. The Stoic response would be to embrace the imperfections of life, recognizing that it is in these imperfections that true beauty and truth lie. When you hear a story that sounds too perfect, don't be afraid to ask questions. Dig deeper. Ask for specifics. And watch how the storyteller responds. If they become vague or defensive, it's a sign that they're not being entirely truthful. By probing beneath the surface, you can uncover the reality behind the polished facade. Chapter 4: The Truth in Body Language. Body turned away. Body language is one of the most honest forms of communication. When someone's body is angled away from you during a conversation, even if they're talking directly to you, it's a subtle sign that they're uncomfortable with the topic at hand. Reflect on a time when you were having a deep, personal conversation with a friend, and you noticed that every time the conversation touched on something sensitive, they would subtly shift their body away from you. At first, you thought it was just a coincidence. But as it happened repeatedly, you began to realize that their body was betraying their discomfort, even when their words remained composed. The Stoics believed in the importance of living in alignment with one's values, of being true to oneself. When someone's body language contradicts their words, it's a sign that they are not in alignment, that they are hiding something or avoiding the truth. The Stoics would encourage us to pay attention to these subtle cues, as they often reveal the unspoken truths that lie beneath the surface. Epictetus taught that we should always strive to be in control of our own minds and bodies, to ensure that our actions and words are in harmony with our inner values. When someone's body turns away from you during a conversation, it's a sign that their mind and body are not in alignment, that they are experiencing an internal conflict between what they are saying and what they are truly feeling. In your own interactions, pay close attention to body language. If you notice someone turning their body away, take it as a cue to probe deeper. Ask more questions, and watch how they respond. Body language is often more truthful than words. And by reading these subtle signs, you can gain insight into what the other person is truly feeling. The facade of humor. Humor is a powerful tool, but when it's used to deflect serious conversations, it often masks deeper issues. People who laugh off serious topics are often trying to avoid dealing with uncomfortable truths. Recall a relationship where every time you tried to bring up something important, whether it was about the future, your feelings, or a significant issue, the other person would respond with a joke or laughter. At first, you thought it was just their way of lightening the mood. But over time, you began to realize that it was a tactic to avoid having serious conversations. Humor can be a shield, a way to protect oneself from the discomfort of facing reality. The Stoics believed in the importance of facing the truth head-on, without flinching. They would argue that by using humor to avoid serious topics, we are only delaying the inevitable, the moment when we must confront the reality of our situation. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of emotional maturity, of being able to face difficult truths without resorting to avoidance tactics. When someone laughs off a serious topic, it's a sign that they are not ready, or willing, to have an honest conversation. The Stoic response would be to gently but firmly steer the conversation back to the issue at hand, refusing to be sidetracked by humor. The next time someone uses humor to deflect a serious conversation, don't let it slide. Acknowledge the humor, but bring the conversation back to the topic at hand. Ask why they feel the need to laugh it off. and encourage them to engage in a more honest dialogue. By addressing the issue directly, you can break through the facade and get to the heart of the matter. Chapter 5: The Ambiguity of Vagueness. Vagueness when pressed for specifics. Vagueness is the liar's best friend. When someone becomes vague in response to direct questions, it's often a sign that they are trying to avoid being caught in a lie. Reflect on a time when a coworker or friend talked about a significant event or achievement but became vague when pressed for details. Perhaps they spoke about a big deal they were closing, but when asked for specifics, their answers were full of ambiguity. Over time, you began to realize that they were not being entirely truthful and were using vagueness to cover up the lack of substance behind their claims. Vagueness allows people to escape accountability. The Stoics believed in the importance of clarity and honesty in all communication. They taught that we should always strive to speak the truth plainly and directly, without resorting to evasive tactics. When someone is vague, it's a sign that they are not comfortable with the truth, that they are trying to protect themselves from being exposed. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of clear thinking and clear communication. He believed that vagueness was a sign of confusion or dishonesty, and that we should always strive to be as clear and direct as possible in our dealings with others. The Stoic response to vagueness would be to ask for specifics, to probe deeper until the truth is revealed. In your interactions, when you encounter vagueness, don't be afraid to ask for clarity. Push for specifics, and watch how the other person responds. If they continue to be vague, it's a sign that they may be hiding something. By insisting on clear answers, you can cut through the ambiguity and uncover the truth. Chapter 6: Living with Integrity. The Stoic approach to honesty. The Stoics believed that living with integrity was the key to a fulfilled and virtuous life. This meant being honest in all dealings, both with others and with oneself. They taught that by embracing the truth, we free ourselves from the chains of illusion and live a more authentic life. Living with integrity is not always easy, especially in a world where dishonesty can seem like the easier path. However, the Stoics believed that true strength lies in the ability to face reality head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. They taught that by living in accordance with our values, we can achieve a state of inner peace and fulfillment that is far more rewarding than any temporary gain achieved through deception. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This means that true freedom comes from within, from the ability to control one's own actions, thoughts, and emotions. For the Stoics, living with integrity was a form of self-mastery. It meant being true to oneself, even in the face of adversity, and refusing to compromise one's values for the sake of convenience or expedience. In your own life, strive to live with integrity in all things. This means being honest, not just with others, but with yourself. It means confronting uncomfortable truths, rather than avoiding them, and always striving to act in accordance with your values. By doing so, you will cultivate a sense of inner peace and fulfillment that is far more valuable than any temporary gain achieved through dishonesty. Chapter 7: Building Stronger Relationships. The foundation of trust. Trust is the foundation of any strong relationship. Whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a professional partnership. However, trust is fragile and can be easily broken by dishonesty. The Stoics believed that trust was built on a foundation of honesty and integrity. They taught that in order to build strong, lasting relationships, we must be truthful in all our dealings and hold others to the same standard. When trust is broken, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to repair. Seneca wrote, "Trust men and they will be true to you, treat them greatly and they will show themselves great." This means that by trusting others, we encourage them to live up to that trust. However, the Stoics also recognized that trust must be earned, and that once it is broken, it may never be fully restored. In your relationships, strive to build trust by being honest and holding others to the same standard. When trust is broken, don't be afraid to confront the issue head-on. Discuss what happened, why it happened, and whether the relationship can be repaired. By addressing the issue directly, you can either rebuild the trust or decide to move on. Chapter 8: The Power of Authenticity. Embracing your true self. The Stoics believed that living an authentic life meant embracing your true self, your values, your beliefs, and your principles, and living in accordance with them, no matter what. In a world where we are often pressured to conform to the expectations of others, living authentically can be a challenge. However, the Stoics taught that true fulfillment comes from being true to oneself, rather than trying to please others. They believed that by embracing our true selves, we can achieve a state of inner peace and contentment that is far more valuable than any external validation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This means that instead of debating or worrying about what others think, we should focus on living in accordance with our own values and principles. For the Stoics, authenticity was about being true to oneself, regardless of external pressures. In your own life, strive to live authentically. This means being true to your values and beliefs, even when it's difficult or unpopular. It means embracing your true self, rather than trying to conform to the expectations of others. By living authentically, you will cultivate a sense of inner peace and fulfillment that is far more valuable than any external validation. The journey toward truth. In the journey toward truth, we must be willing to face uncomfortable realities, both in ourselves and in others. The Stoics believe that by embracing the truth, we free ourselves from the chains of illusion and live a more authentic, fulfilling life. They taught that honesty, integrity, and authenticity are the keys to building strong relationships, achieving inner peace, and living a virtuous life. As we navigate the complexities of human interaction, let us remember the wisdom of the Stoics. Let us strive to live in accordance with our values, to seek the truth in all things, and to hold ourselves and others to the highest standards of honesty and integrity. By doing so, we can build stronger, more meaningful relationships, and achieve a state of inner peace and fulfillment that is far more valuable than any temporary gain achieved through deception.